clients and things. We have Bezu and Vera, etc. So a lot to explore. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I will start with a question out of the list. Yesterday, I moderated a panel with Joy, MetaMask CEO, and we touched upon a little bit on quite competitive L2 market. Dilution of L2s, still we can see a lot of L2s happen. So my question to you, how do you compete on L2 market, and what are the key competitive advantages that attract developers?
Cool, I'll start. I mean, I'm going to first off by saying, stop saying the word competitor. I think there's multiple things, right? I want to take it like, let's just start with like the nice aspect. Like, how are we collaborating, right? So first off, multi-prover is something that we are really bullish on from like a consensus perspective. So if you're not familiar with it, kind of the gist of it is we fail if there is a single prover implementation, right? If we're all about decentralization, we need multiple L2s, we need transactions having kind of a consensus of truth across both Scrolls prover, Linea prover, whoever else is there, right? But I think in the kind of the beginning stage, right, let's say like what will happen is we want to be within the top 10 L2s is probably what we're aiming for, right? That's when you kind of lean really heavily on ecosystem, right? So Linea is already a default network in MetaMask, which I think is a really good kind of breaking the UX barrier. There's an element of security because users feel safer not having to click add network. And I think you can kind of say like leveraging the power of referral systems between both MetaMask and Linea is a really strong value proposition for dApp developers. And the other thing that I think is super cool about Linea that no one ever knows is we are the only multi-client L2. And I think that just kind of speaks to how our team thinks about building our prover and how we do gas and everything. But yeah, Hyperledger Bezu is an open source consensus team, if you guys did not know that. So have been working very closely and collaboratively with them. And that comes with all of its other benefits. But yeah, I think that's kind of like, I guess, the competitive aspect of it. But like, yeah, there's so much more. Like, if Linea was the only one, I think it would suck because Linea itself cannot support everybody that wants to onboard into the Web3 space, right? So please stay here forever. Like, but yeah, that's kind of how I'm going to cap that off.
Looking forward to support from MetaMask in order to keep us around. No, I think from my perspective, right, like, I'm also very excited to see like a really robust L2 ecosystem. I think it is a thing where like a lot of folks can provide lots of different value. I think there's plenty of places to experiment in the L2 stack as well. I think everyone's going to keep making different bets about how to best do that, right? Some folks are going to go the degen route, and we don't need to say their names or anything, and some other folks are going to say like, no, we want to focus on builders, we want to focus on credible neutrality, we want to focus on open source. And there will be everything in between, from EVMs to VMs and everything. I think one of the big things, though, that I think about in like the current spread of building these ecosystems, right, is like, I think people also are very interested in like the cultures of these teams and the cultures of how these things are getting built. And I hope that people keep experimenting and engaging with lots of multiple teams and kind of like trying to find their home in their home community, right? I think it would be a shame if the folks with the narrative that want to build new silos of interoperability, and I wouldn't want to see them be the winners just for because they might be viewing this competition, if that makes sense.
Interesting. I like, from my perspective, builders choose the most convenient and the most scalable L2. Community is not that the key, or that from my perspective, community doesn't play a key role for builders in terms of choosing and yet another L2s. But just again, it's my experience from visiting a lot of hackathons and Hacker House, because builders, they need to deliver, they need to distribute the product.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that generally, but with some caveats, right? I think you also need to kind of look at what kind of builder you're looking for. So definitely, I agree with like an individual developer visiting the space. Maybe they don't know what they want to do. They're trying to figure out use cases. I will say like Scroll has an amazing developer relations team. So in terms of like finding your first home and footing in Web3, I think like community vibes is a big part of it, right? But once we start thinking about like ecosystem and dApp developers and things like, I'm gonna deploy on mainnet. In order to be successful, I need users transacting on me. Then that's kind of like where, we're talking about like, where's the cheapest? Where am I gonna get the most users? And that also ties into support from the team itself, right? Like how responsive is like Linea or Scroll's team to my needs, helping with mentorship, helping me expose them and channel all the energy that L2s already have as a chain into making me successful, right? So it is two different things. I will say, from a hackathon perspective, I think there is also a lot of like, I don't even know what to do. So I probably shouldn't say this. I should stop saying this. But I feel like hackathons, it's true, no one has any real loyalty to any chain because they're just looking for what's possible. But it's kind of how do you develop the relationship after the hackathon that more so lands. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think to build on that too, like, right, community can mean a lot of things. I think in mentioning this idea of like builders have to go through all these different stages, right? We also are not seeing people always just building something in isolation on a chain, right? They're looking at all the other things that are composable with their application, right? So if you want to use Uniswap and Aave and Compound, right, you might be choosing a different chain than if you want to, say, be using an NFT marketplace. And so those are things that are like, maybe community, maybe ecosystem, you can label them what you want, right? But there is something where there is vibe, and I think it weighs more heavily at this point than people maybe realize. So.
Thank you for takeaways. So let's proceed with the topic of our panel, which is zkEVM. zkEVM promised more cheaper and faster ecosystem. Still, we're facing some issues, and it's not that different from classic EVM at the moment. So, what is your forecast when the promises will gain the execution itself for zkEVM?
Right, so I'm assuming you're saying like in comparison to like optimistic EVMs, right? So I think to that point, right, yes, zkEVM, I guess execution is more expensive now. I think it is not going to be, and from the Linea side, we just had a release, I think 2 weeks ago, Alpha V2, where we put in a bunch of data compression techniques that made us as cheap as like Arbitrum. zkSync is a zkEVM, they are cheaper. I mean, I guess they're not like a type 2 or EVM, but regardless, and I think the other thing that people don't realize, right, that's really cool about zk rollups versus optimistic rollups is because we're using mathematical proofs, right, what that allows us to do is recursively shrink proofs over and over again. I prove a proof of a proof of a proof, which is really cool because the cost incurred from an L2 is actually that data that you post on, right? And I think from the perspective of looking forward towards the future and where we can, like infinite scale is probably the bad word to say, but like continue to scale, like there is a limit that a fraud proof will take as opposed to something like a math proof, right? And that's kind of where like Linea's tech comes in with regards to how we do our proofs and stuff. You know, the hashing schemes we use are optimized for recursion because that is kind of what's going to get us there and improving like cost, speed, etc. So we're getting there. I mean, also if you like talk to the teams too, everyone's moving towards zk anyways. Dirty secret, I guess. Yeah.
Daniel, any takeaway?
On
promises, on zkEVM promises.
Not promises, no. I would just kind of say that, like, I think another aspect, right, is that zero-knowledge cryptography in general is kind of like still having tons and tons of research advancements every day, every week, new papers, new breakthroughs, and the optimistic rollups have a little bit of a head start over all the zkEVMs, right? So I think, you know, it'll be interesting to look at this question in a year's time, right? In our short-term roadmap, transaction compression, 4844, I think is going to be a level the playing field for everyone. It's going to take zkEVM a second longer to get integrated with it because we have to do stuff on the circuit side. We don't just get to flip the switch on it. But yeah, I think as we see the space mature, we'll meet the promises, I promise.
Yeah. You start to talk about challenges. Let's narrow down to 2024 only. Don't look too forward. Research is a challenge, education is a challenge. Can you name a few more the biggest challenges for zk scaling?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be there's technological challenges, and then there's like what I would say like almost product challenges or ecosystem challenges, right? I think on the technological side, we have our work cut out for us in the short term, thinking about before transaction compression, bringing those gas costs down immediately. But every zkEVM, right, has a lot of work to do in terms of decentralization, censorship resistance, and really kind of full stack, making sure that we have like complete sound open source circuits that everyone's able to look at and assess. And so I think there's a medium long-term roadmap there for those things. But in that short term, it's like how do we get users happy and users their needs by getting the gas costs down as quickly as possible. And then I think the other thing that everyone's thinking about is interoperability between these chains and making that seamless for users. Maybe not a short-term thing, but people are talking about it as though it's a short-term thing, so it has to kind of get addressed.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to not be redundant when you say that tech is hard and education is important, right? But right, yeah. But I mean, I love what you said about like decentralization is definitely like really hard to think about and do properly. I will speak actually maybe to just a personal experience I had at ETH Denver, probably with regards to education. It's really interesting, I think, being here because I've talked to like Google people and like Accenture people and various like just Web 2 kind of interested parties, right? And the questions they're asking me about using Linea and stuff is they hear the word zk rollup and they're like, oh, this is perfect for our like corporate use case. We can do private transactions, et cetera, which is like completely false, right? We're using zk to reduce data size and make it as cheap as possible. And like there's an element of like, I think what's going to be really difficult is maybe one part like helping educate people that zk does not equate privacy. zk for us equates scaling, and like that's like obviously a user adoption kind of thing that's required. But then also thinking about like, yeah, we're all talking about it's amazing, like zk rollups are going to make things cheap and fast and everything, but I think the privacy aspect of it still hasn't been solved, and you're not going to get like mass adoption until like somebody has been like addressing that issue. But yeah, maybe not a zk problem, zkEVM problem, but like a zk problem. General, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You dedicated to your question. So Daniel, Scroll made some noise with mainnet launch, right? Can you announce something else upcoming in your ecosystem?
Yeah, I think maybe I already talked about transaction compression and data availability stuff on Ethereum twice now. So the technical stuff is there. Those will be very exciting for gas costs. I think longer term, or like maybe in the ecosystem side, we've had a lot of like super exciting developments. I think since then, right? We were the first zkEVM to be on Aave. We had Dune integrate last week, which is super exciting. We're really focused on making sure that we have like the foundations and the beginning of the tech tree that is necessary for devs to go build their dream product, right? So having Uniswap, having Aave, having Compound, having Chainlink, having Dune, devs need these things to make their lives better and easier. And then in terms of like the ecosystem side, we have a lot of exciting things coming in the next year, and keep your eye out for them. So.
Maybe we can sign an NDA and you can share more.
All right, we'll get an NDA to the 100. No.
Okay, Emily. Yesterday we discussed with Joy that Linea is not in rush. You go step by step. And can you elaborate a bit more? What is unique in Linea onboarding process for builders?
Yeah, what's unique? I would say what's unique is our team has no work-life balance. I don't know if that's actually unique to crypto. Never mind. Sorry. What is normal and for everybody is that Linea has no work-life balance. But what I can say for that is a guarantee for the builders on Linea. again, is that we kind of hold your hand throughout the way, provide like, we are lucky, again, I keep wanting to say this, that we're fortunate to have kind of all of Consensus experience, not just from like our products, but also the people in there who have been working and like are able to make those connections. I think, you know, again, and I really want to kind of filter what builders means, right? Because there's builders from like newbies versus builders trying to deploy and like gain traction. And I think that's like what Linea has done very beautifully. I don't know if that's kind of too majestic of a way of saying it, right? Is we are running Linea Voyages right now, which are basically kind of curated Web3 journeys to explore the different dApps on Linea, right? And I think this has been a really great opportunity, and we've had fantastic feedback from our partners that have been on there, because the way I see it, right, is like Linea has a huge amount of eyeballs. How do we channel that energy towards giving feedback, load testing early dApps who would not get that otherwise? And then I think the other piece to it, right, is this isn't a builder part. Sorry, I'm just getting up on tangent here because I'm really excited about what this means, right? Is when chains, especially with like our expertise being able to talk to these projects one-on-one, have the ability to like hand select, hey, these are the DeFi dApps that we recommend you, like, I guess, interact with. Let me educate you about what these primitives mean along the way. It's like a really cool kind of entrance point, just not for like Web3 people already just trying to figure out what's on Linea, but also just like today, actually, I met a grandma who was actually participating in Linea Park, which was insane. She's like, yeah, I've never played a Web3 game before, but like you had this interface where I could go in and I downloaded like a MetaMask security snap, which does like transaction insights and everything, and then she went and played some like MMO. And I'm like, lady, you do more than me. Like, that was amazing. But anyways, I guess to that extent, what's really interesting, I guess, is that we embrace that culture and like introduce those builders to kind of what we're able to give them. Yeah.
Thank you. I was about to give one question to audience, but I will not. I'm so hungry to talk to people like you because you have direct access to the ecosystem. This is the last question, and we have access to builders. I want you to share what kind of projects you expect to be built on your layer 2, maybe yet another eigen layer, or what do you expect for?
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk from like what my BD team tells me to look for, right? I think it's a few things, right? Number one, DeFi is always the most important in terms of just like liquidity on chain is a type of infrastructure. Things will not move smoothly if you don't have that, right? So that's like layer 1, or the requirement, right? Base layer. And then once we look into kind of drawing in users, keeping them sticky, that's when we start talking about consumer use cases. Right, so we're very interested in social dApps and gaming dApps and what that looks like. We're really excited. So that's kind of the 3 pillars, kind of ancillary, right? Everyone loves to eat the entire pie. Whatever you're building, please come through, right? I think there's another element of, I'm going to be honest, like Linea doesn't have a huge NFT community, so that's definitely something that we're thinking about kind of long term for 2024. I think especially for me, that's very personal because I onboarded into Linea, or sorry, Web3 in general, because NFTs got me excited. And I guess the very last piece, and this is like a total personal cop-out, something I'm iterating right now on is like the Linea Builders Pond, where everyone's a frog that comes in. So maybe expect that in 2024. Probably totally separate, but I needed to show that. So, yeah.
We're gonna have to come up with our own cute things, but no frogs here. I think for Scroll, like I mentioned, we put a lot of work into getting these like core building blocks in the DeFi space there, and so yeah, I think that's the low-hanging fruit for a lot of these ecosystems is to like get those things going. I would say for devs, you know, you could be in a lot of different places in your journey, right? You can be like you've done a hackathon or not, and you're just getting started. Reach out. You can be like having an open source project and don't know how to quite bring it into the next level. Reach out. We have resources to help you acquire devs, get you to the next level. Maybe you already have a project you've raised. We have all sorts of other resources we can provide around security and other things to help you keep moving. So, love to see lots of use cases. But personally, the thing that I really like seeing in our ecosystem is folks experimenting with zk technology. I mentioned the privacy issue, right? And so we're really excited to see folks that are building what I call like applied zk apps, right? So They're deploying zk-proof verifiers on scroll and then writing them in languages like Noir to deploy the scroll. And you get to see lots of new novel use cases, and you can prove those proofs cheaper, way cheaper than you can do that on L1, and so it opens up a lot of new possibilities.
Last question, how to find you if some of our builders want to reach you?
I guess on Twitter, I'm _EMJLIN. On Farcaster, I'm Emily Lynn. If you really want to find me and catch my attention, join /frog on Farcaster and like post your questions as a frog meme, and that's actually how I'll get in touch with you. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, my telegrams like PokeEmilyMon and other, yeah, you can. That's where you can find me.
And for me, I am DGHELM, DG Helm, everywhere. And if you really want to find me, I guess we can have coffee in Oklahoma City. I don't really know, but that's it.
Thank you. Guys, we're out of time. It was super insightful. Thank you for your time. Thank our builders. Hope it will inspire you to build on Linea or Scroll.